The following is a Hoop Ball presentation.
Hello and welcome to the Hoop Ball NBA DFS Today podcast. Today is Monday, December 9th, and I am Joe Sarvadi, affectionately known as Coach. And I have the pleasure of breaking down a really good slate tonight. It is a 9-gamer, and main slate lock is at 7 p.m. Eastern. So we have a lot of work to do here. It should be a great card. There are some really good contests out there in the industry, and should be a fun Monday. So before we get off and rolling here, I want to thank our presenting sponsor, Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. They are the main sponsor of hoop-ball.com, and that is our home base. So we appreciate them, and we all seem to have, little by little, all joined the Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee consumption team here. The whole DFS Pro group is all now ordering on Amazon, and boom, it is there. So look them up online, or the easiest way is get that. If you have that Amazon Prime account, just search Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee, click a few buttons, and it's on your doorstep the next day. So awesome stuff. I also want to thank our listeners. We're going over some of the numbers, and we're growing so quickly. It's just it's exciting to see. We're only a couple of months into the season. It's only 25% of the season has been completed, so we're at the quarter point, and we have just grown week over week. We add listeners, add followers, and it's just great to see. And so, I just wanted to take this time to thank everybody that have just listened every day. We get great comments and feedback. Remember, just jump on there wherever podcasts are found. All you have to do is search NBA Today. It'll come up. NBA DFS Today, Hoop Ball NBA DFS Today. It always comes up really quick. One of the first things that come up on search when you're looking. And you can grab us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, iHeart, Spotify, YouTube, everywhere podcasts are found. All we ask here, and it really helps us, like evaluating what I was just talking about. If you just take a second to rate, review, subscribe, 5 stars if you're on iTunes. If you can leave a little comment, that's awesome. Likes, thumbs up, on YouTube, whatever it takes to just give us some feedback. And then also, if you can follow us on Twitter, that's the best way to communicate with the entire DFS Pro team here at Hoop-Ball. That is the best way to do it. And the main Twitter account is at hoopballfantasy. That is connected to our hoop-ball.com home base, and that will give you all of the constant 24/7 information updates, blurbs. We have Miles and Andy also posting things, and I'm generally putting all of the player news up there as the day goes on as well. So join us there for sure. I'm at Joe Sarvadi, JoeSarvadi. So, all right, without any further ado here, let's jump into this awesome 9-game slate. It is mid-morning here on Monday, so usually we do the show the night before, but there's so much news and so many teams on back-to-backs. I wanted to wait until this morning, put out a fresh show when we know some guys that are sitting. We have updated lines to give us a feel that are going to help us with each game. All right, let's rock and roll with this. I'm going to call up on my screen here pace and defensive efficiency. Those are two things I think that are two of the factors that are very important to look at every day. Really gives you, helps you game script a little bit of what you can anticipate for that card. And, as I've always said before, you got to put a combination of all this information together to build winning lineups. And then you have to stay tuned in until the last second before lock to make sure there's no late changes. All right, first game, 7 p.m. Eastern, LA Clippers at the Indiana Pacers. Clippers are on the second night of a back-to-back. It looks as though right now Kawhi Leonard will sit this second half of a back-to-back, and the Paul George will play. So that's what we have on the new player news on that side. Malcolm Brogdon is dinged up a little bit. He was listed questionable last night, but he's been upgraded to probable. His quote in the coach talk there, actually, there was a little chat there that he was expecting to play. So he is now probable. So we look at Clippers Pacers. Let's take a look at the pace of play in this game. Right now, the Clippers are 7th in the league, so they are getting up and down the floor. You would expect them to be more of a half-court defensive grind team, but a lot of what they're getting is in transition. Their defense leading to offense, and therefore increasing the amount of possessions per game and increasing the pace. So they are 7th in the league. Indiana, on the other hand, is 23rd. They are more of a slow-down, half-court offense. Obviously, with the two bigs out there in Turner, who's done very, very little this year, and Sabonis, who's having a breakout year, they will generally set it up, try to, running through one of the bigs, with they've got some great options with Lamb and TJ Warren, and then Brogdon's a stud as well. And now with their bench being so deep, because they used a lot of those guys when people were out hurt, they can go bigs with Goga Bitadze, who does a nice job off the bench. And also, with Aaron Holiday, TJ McConnell's been super efficient. When Brogdon missed the other day, both TJ and Aaron Holiday made value. Both were like 6 or 7x on the same team as fill-in for Brogdon. So they are a solid team. They're going to be a lot to be reckoned with come playoff time. This matchup is an interesting one. I think with Kawhi out and the fact that the Clippers are on a back-to-back and it's at Indiana, it makes this game completely a toss-up. And Vegas thinks the same thing. Right now, the Clippers are only a 1-point favorite, road favorite, which I'm surprised they're the favorite with Kawhi sitting out. Don't be surprised if that line doesn't shift to Indiana being a point or two favorite as the day goes on. Defensive efficiency-wise, we know the Clippers are strong. They're 9th, certainly not as good with Kawhi off the floor, so that will go down a little bit. On the Indiana side of the ball, they are sitting right now at 8. So you have two top 10 defensive teams. The over-under is a pretty low 217.5. And, this becomes a pretty tough game for me on the Indiana side because of the consistent and solid defense from the Clippers. And I've had trouble playing the Pacers lately since so many guys are contributing. I mean, there's just so many mouths to feed on that Pacers side. They're splitting up that usage and those minutes. So I think you have to definitely consider Paul George on the Clippers side, sort of one of those scenarios where, if Kawhi or George sits, the other one becomes immediately in play. And, Paul George's usage increases with Kawhi off the floor by 5 percentage points. So Paul George certainly well into play here. His salary is not bad, because they put those out, I think without knowing for sure Kawhi was sitting. So you get a little bit of a break there. So he's probably the only spot I'm going to go in this game, but I think he's a very strong cash and GPP play. Okay, game 2. We have a 7:30 Eastern Time start, and this is going to be a tough one to get a lot of action in for sure. It is the Cleveland Cavaliers at the Boston Celtics. You've got the largest spread on the slate with Boston favored by a big 14, and that's probably not nearly enough the way Cleveland's playing. They're playing terrible. And the over-under is only 214.5, the second lowest on the slate. Boston is without Robert Williams. The big guy is out. And Gordon Hayward is actually listed as questionable. This might be the return of Gordon Hayward from the injury. The question is he going to see minutes? And if he does, is he going to be on a minutes restriction? That's yet to be seen. I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time since we have 9 games. Cleveland's playing terrible ball and playing against Boston's defense, low total, blowout risk. I know some of the younger guys still may play even if it is a blowout, but I just don't see going to anybody on Cleveland's side, when we have 18 teams in play. The Boston situation, especially if Hayward gets back in there, that throws a monkey wrench into everything as far as the value, for all those guys, really. I mean, it changes everything for Kemba and Turner and Tatum. So pass for me, full pass on this game, just not worth it, too much risk. Game 3, 8 o'clock, we have the Toronto Raptors on the second night of a back-to-back. They're playing at the Chicago Bulls, who are also on a second night of a back-to-back. So you'll have 2 somewhat tired teams. Toronto is a 6.5-point road favorite. It's a 214.5 over-under, so tied with the last game for the second lowest. That creates a situation that isn't extremely palatable either. It looks as though everybody's going to play. Van Vliet got hurt a little bit in that last game, but it looks as though he will return as of news right now. Pace of play, we have the Toronto Raptors at 13th, and the Chicago Bulls are sitting at a quaint 12th. So they're both in the middle of the pack. From a defensive efficiency standpoint, we know the Raptors D it up. They're up to 6th, and they do clamp down. Chicago has improved all the way to 12th. So they're playing much better defense also. This is one of those games, news is going to be important. I think from the Toronto side, if Van Vliet happens to sit, then Lowry is 100% in play. On the back-to-back against Chicago, not sure how much they'll stretch everybody out. Siakam is expensive, and he would be a fantastic play here. However, again, we need to watch the news here, because if Toronto is at full strength as it looks right now, you got to just see if that's something that's doable, because Siakam would be my option for Toronto. On the Chicago side, Zach LaVine's been up and down. He's had some good games, doesn't always get those periphery statistics. The rest of the Bulls have been monster hit or miss, really never know who to count on. You're starting to get some more contribution from guys like Valentine and stuff off the bench. So not a great team either. Prefer not to go this game at all. Siakam is possible if I can financially figure out how to do it in this wonderful salary world that we live in. But that's it for there. I think there's much, much better plays coming up. Okay, we've got a trio of 8 Eastern games. The first one is the Sacramento Kings. They're on the second half of a back-to-back. They held on for dear life after blowing a 26-point lead against Dallas. Luka had a shot with 6 seconds left to tie it, got fouled, but they didn't call it, and Sacramento held on. So their guys played real heavy minutes to try to hang on to that game. Real big efforts from guys like Barnes and Hield, and everybody just played their butts off. So they are going to be tired, I think, and they have to play the Rockets. Not a good combination whatsoever. But there is some concern here. Couple of things. First of all, Houston is a 12.5-point favorite, and blowout is a potential. But we also know that D'Antoni is somewhat blowout proof. He's proven that he'll keep Harden and Westbrook in there when they're up 30. So you never know, if he's going to continue to do that. It looks like he has in the past. So you can pretty much count on those guys being able to stack it on and pile on the stats. From the Sacramento side, Bagley is still doubtful out this game. He may be back the next game. He's been out for a while. So their rotation will pretty much stay the same. Holmes played a lot of minutes and played hard against Dallas yesterday. The question is, a lot of this game scripting has to do with Houston. We had that string of 7 games in a row where Capella had a minimum of 19 rebounds, which hadn't happened since 74 when Jabbar did it. Actually, Lou Alcindor at that point, and Will Chamberlain. So it's been a hell of a rebound run for Capella. However, the last 2 games that has changed. Houston has played teams where they've been able to go small ball, and D'Antoni loves to do that. Slide PJ Tucker to the center and have McLemore, House, Westbrook, and Harden out there, and just spread the floor out for Harden and Westbrook and let them just deal from there. If that happens, which it could against Sacramento, who's not a super big team, depending on how much they're going to play Willie Cauley-Stein or Holmes. I'm sorry, not Willie Cauley-Stein. That was last year. Rashawn Holmes. But he's not really a full-blown 5. He's sort of a 4-5 with athleticism. So there's no guarantees there. I think, Capella's a fine play. He's a little expensive, but the fact that he can go 20-20 on a night where D'Antoni actually keeps him in there, I think I would favor this being a game where he may get a little more extra run, especially since the last 2 where he played less. So Capella's on my radar at center without question. I think he would be a fine play. On the Sacramento side, again, you've got a tremendous up-pace game, so that makes you want to play him. Houston's the fastest pace in the league right now, so you got to love that. But guess who's last? The Sacramento Kings. How is that possible? Sacramento was second or third almost all of last year in pace. Obviously, they brought in Luke Walton, and now he's got him playing half-court defense where they try to run a bunch of plays to get Hield or Bogdanovich or somebody an open 3, or they let Barnes, sort of pound the ball into the ground in ISO. And I know Fox has been out, and that's affected some of it, but still, it's hard to believe. So you've got 2 things to look at here. Houston, obviously, you can't get a worse pace down game for them. And Sacramento, you can't get a better pace up game. However, another thing, Sacramento's second night of a back-to-back, are they going to play more guys? Is there the potential that they get blown out and substitute a bunch of guys on their side? I think there's a good chance that happens. I watched a lot of that game yesterday, and I think they used a ton of energy, and now they had to travel to Houston and try to lace up for that game. So even though it's the best pace-up game possible for Sacramento, we have to watch the news on this game because I know Bogdanovich has been playing a little dinged up, and Corey Joseph's been playing dinged up. And, that makes me want to play a little Buddy Hield. And depending on the matchups, if Hield gets Harden on defense, which I doubt they'll go that route, but it's possible in some of the rotations he will. I think that brings Hield into play. And you certainly have to consider him just on the fact of increased possessions and the amount of pace in this game. On the Houston side, Harden has to be, at the top of the list. He's got to be somewhat of a foundational guy here. He's just absolutely been out of his mind. I think that, his fantasy output against a team like Sacramento is probably going to be gigantic. I mean, the only time to fade Harden, in my opinion, is when he's playing a team, and we've talked about this a few times, but I have to drive it home because I want everybody to know this because it's totally shifts the entire slate, is, when Houston plays a team like Boston with a Smart, or Toronto with an Anunoby, or the Clippers with a Beverly, where they can run that half-court trap, put a guy on him, run another guy to him, and take the ball out of his hands and force him to give it up, then you can easily fade Harden because, as we know, he's got to score 55, 58 fantasy points to make value. So in those scenarios, you fade him. But in other scenarios like this where Sacramento doesn't really have the defenders to play him, I think he has to be your number one option. I know he's costly, but, at home game, they're somewhat blowout proof. I mean, I don't know if you can afford not to have the 60, 65, 70 fantasy points that Harden puts on the board. So, even if Sacramento can keep this within shouting distance, I think Harden's a great play. Westbrook, on the other hand, he can be a lot more boom or bust. He's obviously shooting the ball just horrifically from the field. He still gets monster fantasy points because he does everything else so well. But, I don't really want to pay up for both of these guys in this game, especially when it's such a pace down. So Harden's probably going to be my only guy, and Capella. I do like Harden and Capella in this game. I want to try to be able to afford both of them. And that's going to be a big part of the foundation of my build. And I'm going to try to get Buddy Hield in there as well. So this is probably the game where I'll have the most guys with 3. And I think it's a good target game to go for. Okay, the second game of the 8 o'clock trio is Orlando at Milwaukee. Pretty low 218 total. Again, another fear of a blowout here. Milwaukee, 13.5-point favorite. Milwaukee is the second fastest paced team in the league, and Orlando is the second slowest team in the league. So that's 2 games in a row. We have the exact opposite. Interesting. Orlando still has been without Vuk now for a while, and they're doing the center by committee between Birch and Bamba, and playing small a little bit. Milwaukee just plays such good, solid D, and they've been beating the life out of everybody. I mean, they have been running it up. They now are not only the fastest team in the league, they're the number 1 defensive efficiency team in the league. That is pretty impressive, and their record shows that. I mean, they're just kicking ass. Orlando, on the other side of the ball, defensively, they're 10th, so they're doing a solid job. They're getting up and playing people. Giannis is always in play for sure. His price tag being the highest, blowout potential against a slower paced team like Orlando, where he's going to see a combo of defense from some guys that that can D it up. He'll certainly get a little bit of double team and such, and it might bring some other guys into play. But again, Milwaukee's been so efficient; they've shared it between Middleton and Bledsoe, and all of those guys. So it makes it pretty tough on the Milwaukee side. and the Orlando side. And I think this game's an easy pass for me. It just, too many things can go wrong, and I don't want to spend top salary in a game where Giannis may get minimal minutes if it's a blowout. Okay, third 8 o'clock game. Interesting game. It's Detroit at the Pelicans. Pelicans are a 1.5 point favorite, and the over-under is 226.5. Drummond has been an absolute stinking monster, and it's hard not to roster him here. The Pelicans are without, Favors is questionable. So if Favors comes back, I think that hurts Drummond because he's a bigger body and he's a better defender, and he can create at least an annoyance for Drummond. If he doesn't play, then you're talking about the skinny Jackson Hayes, who he'll bang around. That won't be pretty for him. So they may go to Okafor if Favors isn't in there for quite a few minutes, because they've got to get a body on Drummond. And Okafor has not played very well. He hasn't played a ton of minutes lately. So this is going to be a game shifter for me. If Favors is out, I'll probably go to Drummond instead of Capella at center. And if Favors is in, I'll probably stick with Capella and not make that switch to Drummond. I think that Brandon Ingram's a fantastic play here. It's a home game, a high over-under. He's such a go-to guy for them right now. It's just awesome. And even Drew Holiday. I mean, you can't go wrong really with Holiday or Ingram. They're definitely the two highest usage guys. I know Ball's been getting the ball more. Kenrich Williams is pretty much a full speed now, coming back from both the birth of a child and an ankle sprain. So he's doing okay. But I don't think there's a ton of value on that side. A lot of their bench shares minutes. If you can fit Ingram or Holiday, specifically Ingram in your lineup, I would go that route. On the Detroit side, I don't trust Blake yet. He's still not himself. He had a good game last time out, but I think he's just, toeing the line. The perimeter players, way too risky for me, not enough upside. So really it's Drummond or bust there, unless Favors is ruled in without a minutes restriction. But I'd like to focus on Drummond here if at all possible. Okay, let me mention, though, real quickly on the pace for these two teams, just in case people are interested in that little tidbit so we don't skip by it. Detroit's 24th paced, and New Orleans is 4th. So big pace-up game for Detroit. I like that better for Drummond even, because more opportunities for rebounds, more possessions. That even makes me want to take Drummond even more. A little bit of a bummer for the pace down, for the Ingram and Holiday consideration. Detroit defensively 17th, a little bit below middle of the pack. New Orleans 28th, so they are not getting it done. It's going to be hard not to play Drummond. The more things I look at, the more it makes me want to take him for sure. I think that it's going to be hard not to take him. Okay. We have 3 games left. 2 9 o'clock, and then we have a true late-night hammer sweat game at 10:30 Eastern. So it'll be a standalone late-night game. Just a couple things to mention real quickly. We are sponsored and presented by Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. Look them up online. Jump on there on Amazon Prime, get that ordered up, and it's on your doorstep the next day. Phenomenal coffee. Definitely the choice of all of our DFS pod hosts and pros. Look us up on Twitter. We really try to stay active there. That's where all of our communication takes place with everybody out there, listeners-wise. Don't be afraid to DM us questions, comments, whatever information you have, send it our way. I'm at JoeSarvadi. We have at MikeApotria for Mike Apotria. We have at Language Olympic for our man Andrew, and at Miles6565 for our pro Miles Hartley. And our hoop-ball.com is at hoopball fantasy. That's where you'll see a lot of the blurbs, any changes in lineups, player news, all that kind of stuff you can read right through there. Like I mentioned earlier, we put this pod out in the morning. It's going to come out early afternoon today, a little bit later than normal, but I want to give you this updated news since it was such a big slate. We try to mention it every day, make it a 3-step process. Listen to that pod, try to start developing a shell lineup, get some good information in your head, plus minus of who to look at. Then you want to follow the news on Twitter all day, follow it real close the last hour up until lock, because any player news that comes out, the NBA teams have to turn in their starting lineups 30 minutes before the game. So you're going to get all the early information. You'll get a lot of the other information as well at that time. And, for sites that do not have late swap, you can't afford to make any mistakes. To remind on that, it's Fantasy Draft and FanDuel do not have any late swap. If you play DraftKings or Yahoo, you can late swap on both of those. I play on all four. I try to pick the right cash games or the right head-to-heads, and occasionally get into GPP, but not a lot. A lot of our guys play the GPPs. Mike does, Andrew does, and so does Miles. Really, I'm sort of the only cash-focused guy, and don't play a whole lot of those. There are some good ones out there that are worth taking a twirl at. I took down a single shot FanDuel one, as you know, about a month ago for $1,500. So that was really cool. But once in a while, you can pop one. And sometimes if I really like my cash lineup that much, I'll put that into some GPPs or maybe make one shift to a little bit of a more risky play that I don't want to quite dial up in cash, but I will in a GPP setting. So jump on those, and if you have questions or anything, hit us up on Twitter, like I said. Also, please follow us every day. Listen to our podcasts. I've already mentioned it, but I'll repeat it again. iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, iHeart, Spotify, YouTube. You can find us anywhere podcasts are found. Take a second to rate, review, subscribe. 5 stars, likes, positive reviews are really welcomed. Even if it's constructive criticism, we listen to it all, and we're just building. We want this to be the biggest DFS show in the entire industry. I feel right now that it's the best 7-day NBA DFS free content show that's out there. There are some good ones, I admit, absolutely, but a lot of them are behind a paywall. And this one, we're able, because of our sponsors and our hoop-ball.com commitment from those guys, that we can still bring this to you each day, and we want to continue to do that. And the best way to do that is get those comments, hit those likes, hit those thumbs up, give us something we can continue to build on. We want to bring in some new sponsors, so if there's any sponsors out there that are interested in getting involved, we want to keep growing this. We haven't missed a single day of I did all of the FIBA stuff for DFS this summer. Mike Apotri and I did 6 preseason shows. You can still look those up on podcasts. They were all about an hour and a half long. It was all the strategy of how to build DFS teams, what strategy to use, cash versus GPP, what each site was like, the whole 9 yards. So if you want a refresher, we're at the quarter point here of the season. Go back and take a listen to those. But we've also done every preseason slate and every regular season slate we're going to do every postseason slate. So, we want to look at the full package of everything that we've done and stuff that we put out there. I know, I do a lot of providing of lineups. I work with Roto Radar as well. And, we've been really fortunate to be super hot this year. My lineups are winning right now at 77.1%, which I would say is one of the better in the industry, to be honest with you. And I'm really proud of that. Not bragging, just really proud of it. So, look me up on Twitter. Follow me here at hoop-ball.com. Follow me at Roto Radar. And let's just keep putting out winners and continuing through a great season. Okay, let's wrap it up. 3 more. We have 9 p.m. Minnesota Timberwolves at the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix Suns are -4. The over-under is 234, the highest on the slate. So, is this the game to stack or not the game to stack? I'm going to say it is the game that most people are going to stack, but I'm not going to stack, and I'll explain why. Minnesota is on the second day of a back-to-back. A game that they played last night was really tight with the Lakers for a while, and then they got blown out in the fourth quarter. But they extended themselves, and they were playing dinged up. Teague was questionable going into that game. Wiggins was questionable going into that game. They both played, but they weren't 100%. Played a lot of minutes in LA, had to fly out to Phoenix last night, and now they have to lace them up again tonight. We got to wait and see what the news is going to be on Minnesota. If Teague sits again, or I'm sorry, not again, because he didn't sit last night, but if he sits, Napier becomes in play off the bench. He looked fantastic in a short stint. He had like 27 fantasy points in about 18 minutes last night, somewhere in that neighborhood. So, there are some really good buy down guys for Minnesota. If anybody sits out on this second half of a back-to-back, Bates Job off the bench did a nice job. Jarrett Culver's improving. Certainly, Wiggins is always an opportunity to play just because if he is healthy, we have to watch that news. But, his role, especially with Teague not starting now, he's playing a lot of point guard. The ball's in his hands, and he has the potential to smash on any slate. This is the highest total game, only a 4-point spread. So there's potential there. We just need to watch the news on the Minnesota side. So I like some of the value there. They may help me to create that lineup with Harden and Drummond. I'm going to need some guys like Napier, so I'm hoping some of this value opens up. And a couple of those guys sit. That would be ideal. On the Phoenix side, here's the big news. Aaron Baines, according to Monty Williams this morning, Baines went through the morning shoot-around, did real well, and they said he is probable. And that's huge. He has missed multiple games, and it has just destroyed Phoenix's defense. They were 7th in the league in defensive efficiency when he went out, and they have plummeted all the way down to 18th. So, look at that for a second here, and I think that affects that over-under. That's why, for me, Baines' presence there against Cat and against the interior, even if it's a limited role, it changes the whole view of this game. And I think it lowers that over-under a little bit, and it lowers some of the possessions, and that's why I'm not stacking real big here. So I wouldn't go Baines because I would assume he's going to be on a limits restriction first game back. But, he was playing some fantastic basketball before he went down. Minnesota, defensive efficiency-wise, is sitting at 20th. So they're not exactly killing it either. That's a little bit more reason you maybe dial up some Phoenix guys. And in pace of play, let's look at pace of play here. Minnesota is 5th, so good pace-up game for Phoenix. And Phoenix is tied for 9th. So that's why it's the highest total on the board. You have two top 9 pace teams in this game. On the Phoenix side, it's hard to say. Booker's always capable of going off. His numbers go down when Rubio plays, and Rubio is playing in this game. The other factor is you've got Baines now that'll have some extra touches that'll take a little bit away from some of the Phoenix guys. Certainly that'll cut into the big value play of Kaminsky because he was playing a lot of those center minutes. Again, I'm not going to stack this game, and I think that might be an edge. And I believe Minnesota is going to be tired and a little dinged up on the second night of a back-to-back. And with Baines' appearance back for Phoenix, it's much easier to fade some pieces of this game. Again, I will go here for value, depending on the news with Minnesota. And I'd love to have one or maybe two guys at the most from this game. I think you do need a little exposure, but I don't think you have to stack this game. I really don't. And I think people are going to overstack and have like 5 guys from this game, and it could easily bust. So, okay, 2 left. The other 9 o'clock game, Oklahoma City Thunder at the Utah Jazz. Oklahoma City also on the second night of a back-to-back. They had a really tight game last night as well. Really fought out to the last shot it came down to. And, now they had to travel to Utah. You've got a little advantage home. It's a bigger home advantage for Utah and for Denver than any other places, just because of the air is thinner, and it's definitely, an altitude game. So you got some concern there. Mike Conley is still out for Utah, so that changes some things as well. And as of now, the Thunder didn't have too many reports out yet, so we need to follow that as the day goes on. The over-under is only 210.5 in this game, so we are at the bottom of the barrel. That is the dead lowest over-under. Utah has a tendency to have the lowest over-unders, and it's because they don't play that fast. They are 16th, which is better than most people actually realize, but Oklahoma City is 25th. So you have 2 pace down games, teams that are not going to have any extra possessions. And then on the defensive side, Utah very respectful 11th, and Oklahoma City has climbed up to 16th. So they're in the middle of the pack and doing decently. You always, with Conley out specifically, it definitely brings a few other guys into play. I think Donovan Mitchell becomes a certain option here, and probably the best option for Utah if you want to go on the Utah side. I think Gobert will be battling big body against big body with Adams inside, so that'll help neutralize both of those guys a little bit. So I'm not real high on either one of them. Utah can play some good D, and Oklahoma City's been getting a lot off the bench as well. So this is a definite fade game for me. I don't like it. I see the Mitchell value here without question, but I think this is just a pretty easy game to fade unless some value opens up with someone sitting and you want to jump on them. But if not, let's move on to the last game. We have the 10:30 late night hammer game all by itself. Memphis Grizzlies at the Golden State Warriors. The over-under is 218.5, and believe it or not, somehow, some way, Golden State is favored. I think that will change as the day goes on. It may end up being a pick'em. But the big news here is Ja Morant is playing. So that is something that came out this morning. It was just a couple days ago. They said they were going to check him, and he was week to week. And he went from that to playing. So I would assume he'll be on some type of limits restriction. I haven't seen that in writing, but I'm sure they're not going to just blow out the minutes with him right off the bat if they're trying to protect him. But that changes the whole complexion of the game. It speeds it up. it certainly gives, takes some value away from some of the guys on Memphis. There are two guys that are out. You've got Brandon Clark and Slow-Mo are both out for Memphis. So they're a little shorthanded. That brings guys into play if you need a value grab for maybe a Solomon Hill, Jay Crowder decently. But with Morant back, he's going to grab a lot of that. Dylan Brooks is just so. I really wouldn't go strong there. Now on the Golden State side, it brings some guys into play here. D'Angelo Russell becomes in play just because of the up tempo and speed. Let's take a quick look at the pace in this game as it stands. Memphis is sixth in the league, and that's with Morant sitting some games. If he hadn't sat any games, I would think Memphis's ranking, a true pace, would be about third or fourth. So that's a great sign for Golden State because of that pace up for them. They are sitting at 17th right now. Again, it's how do you judge any stats for them with Draymond and D'Angelo sitting so much, and they were shorthanded and shortening the game when they were only playing with 7-8 guys. So, they're middle of the pack. They still move the ball pretty well. This game should stay close. Neither team is on a second night of a back-to-back. And by the way, none of these teams, of the 18 teams, play tomorrow. So you don't have to worry about anybody sitting players today to save them for a back-to-back tomorrow. So anyway, with this game, I think, I definitely want to have one or two guys of exposure here. I think that this, D'Angelo Russell is a fantastic play. I think if you can, depending on the rest of the news, even with Slow-Mo and Clark out, you can get some value, real good value with a Solomon Hill, maybe a Bruno Caboclo. There are some value dudes on that side of the ball. On Golden State, the rest of the guys, when D'Angelo and Draymond play, it really takes a big chunk out of the rest of the team as far as those value guys we've been riding all year, like the Kai Bowmans and Eric Pascals and, those guys, and Glenn Robinson's been terrific. Now, any of those guys are playable. So, we need to watch news in this game to make sure. It's going to be the late night game, so it's going to be hard to get some of that news. So be careful, of taking any risky guys that it could backfire on you if it's a no swap site. But, I think that those Golden State value guys, D'Angelo's in play. I like the value guys from Memphis as well. So I'm going to find a way to round my lineup out with a couple of value guys, or maybe a value guy and a little bit more expensive D'Angelo Russell here. I would love to dial him up if I can fit him in. So that's it. We've got 9 games. That should give you a real good idea. I didn't mention the defensive efficiency for these two teams, and I think it's worth mentioning because I noticed this earlier. Golden State is 25th in the league in defense, so not good, and Memphis is 22nd. So you've got two pretty poor teams defensively with really a higher over-under than the 218.5 because Morant's playing. I think that Vegas line came out before that news was announced on Jaw. So I would think this is more like a 222 type of an over-under, and I think it brings some of those guys into play. All right, I've gone on quite long enough here. I will be back actually tonight, which is Monday night, to do the show for Tuesday's slate. It's not as big of a slate or expecting as big a news, so I will put the show out tonight. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 games tomorrow. So tomorrow's slate is Washington, Charlotte, Denver, Philly, Atlanta, Miami, and Knicks, Portland. So I will follow up tonight with my regular solo show for that 4-game slate for Tuesday. You have tonight's 9-game slate. Again, if you have any questions, fire me up at Joe Sarvadi, JoeSarvadi, and I'll be happy to share whatever I can with you. All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me for Hoopball NBA DFS today. For Mike Apotria, for my man Andrew and Miles, all three of our other DFS pros here at hoop-ball.com. I am Coach. We will catch you again tomorrow as we look to crush it in NBA DFS.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.